From Clyde Golden, I'm Tim Yaden, and this is Input Doc. It's the podcast where we explore what marketers need and what agencies provide. Hi, everybody. This is Tim. I'm here with Bye and Mariah Lincoln. They're the co-founders of Knack Collective and Knack Coworking here in Seattle. Bye is Chief Executive Officer, and Mariah Lincoln is Chief Operating Officer. Welcome to Input Doc.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. Before we do a show, our producer, Megan O'Neill, sends out a questionnaire to guests, and we'll often talk about what's your next big work-related goal or what's a mission that's driving you. And in it, you had mentioned that one of your key mission that's driving you is you want to prove to marketers and advertisers that agencies can create cultures that are flexible and inclusive and yet still deliver exceptional work for clients. And you say these are not mutually exclusive ideas, which seems when I read it, I think, yes, sure, I want to create a place that's respectful to my team. What have you seen out there in the past that has led you to this point?
Yeah. Well, I spent a career, almost 20 years in tech and marketing. And as a woman, I can say, particularly in the tech industry, I was really frustrated by the lack of role models that I had who were demonstrating what I call feminine leadership, leading with empathy and compassion, allowing for a lot of different pathways. There's a lot of different pathways to success. I didn't see that. I didn't have that as part of my career experience. And in fact, in the first 6 months of working for a very large tech company, which I will not name, I was actually asked to be a witness in a sexual harassment lawsuit. And so my experience, and I hope this is changing, especially when I was pregnant with my daughter, was how am I going to do this job and be the kind of mom that I want to be? I entered the agency world thinking, oh, this is going to be a creative space, and this is going to be a space where we're going to think outside the box and really be open. And I found it just to be a grind culture. And the grind was really what mattered. The profitability of a project, utilization and bill rates. And I can't say that it wasn't any attention to the clients. Obviously, there was attention to the clients, but more about how can we get more money from them? How can we get more hours out of our employees? And that created a workspace that was highly toxic, a lot of trauma. And I can say in my last agency, I was actually having panic attacks, and I didn't recognize them as panic attacks as I'd never had them before. But Mariah and I thought there has to be another way. There has to be a path that we can create where people can be healthier at work. And so we had a vision, which was happier people at work equal happier people at home equal a happier world. And so we started Knack Collective with that vision.
Because work takes up your entire day quite often. And there's no real switch between personal and professional, I find.
Yeah. And just the homogeny of the industry in general, it was, preventing innovation. It was preventing creativity, but it was also limiting who could access the industry. And I think when you have a business strategy that operates off of profitability over everything, you kind of lose the humanity in business. You aren't making decisions based off of your people, which we are in a services industry. Your people are your service. That is how you make revenue. And if you aren't making decisions based off of those people and their happiness and their ability to kind of drive forward their passion, then you're really just making decisions off of how quickly can I make additional dollars? What will it take for me to do that? And it creates an environment, as Catherine alluded to, that's highly toxic, and it, high turnover, just not an environment that we thrived in. And we just felt like there was a better way to do it, a different way to do it. And not that we had all the answers, but we sure as heck we're going to try. And that's kind of where we landed. That was me editing myself from.
It's okay. We can always mark I'm not gonna bleep anything out, but it's okay. There are no magic words. We'll be all right. Somebody once said that to me and it resonated, and I don't know that I've completely thought that through. Often we'll have a job. I'm just listening to you, and will have a job that's quite formative, and then it begins to drive you. I worked in an agency for a number of years. I was a freelancer for a number of years, who worked at an agency for a number of years, and I wasn't done doing the job when I was laid off from the agency. Like, I just still love doing the job. I don't ever want to work for a big company again. If the company became a big company, then I guess I'd work for a big company and we could deal with it emotionally then, but what are types of things that agencies or people in marketing who are running agencies might be doing that are placing unnecessary stress or hindering a great culture at their company?
Well, I would say first and foremost, if you look around the table at who's making decisions at an agency, you'll see, as Mariah referred to it, it's very homogenous. As a woman-owned and founded agency, we're one of only 0.1% of agencies in the US, founded by women. I mean, that is a very, very, very small group. And if you look at, if you don't have representative voices at the table, the experience is not going to work for everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's really what we're focused on, and really trying to be very thoughtful about what does representative marketing look like, right? How do we bring that about at every level of the organization? And so for us, it's, removing ego that we have all the answers, right? It's not about creating an agency that looks exactly the way Mariah and I think it should look to work for us. It's how do we bring people voices to the table that help us really understand how we can make a space that's the most inclusive so that everyone can define their own path and everybody has a voice and everybody has access to success, whatever it looks like for them.
Yeah. And I think that one of the other discussions Catherine and I have a lot, and a large discussion we had before starting the agency, was around competition within the industry and having this mindset of abundance over scarcity and putting energy on what are we really good at, what can we deliver to clients that's different and unique, and not being so focused on how can we crush, the other agencies in our industry. Like, all of that energy being spent on how am I going to change what I deliver to ensure it's better than theirs, versus focusing on what you're really good at and delivering it really well to the clients that you have. I think that that's a mind shift that a lot of agencies don't have. It's a commitment both Catherine and I made to each other because we saw what that competition did internally to the executives at previous agencies that we worked at. And it just bleeds into the entire culture. And you put your energy on the wrong thing. Like, you stop refining and innovating on what you're good at. Instead, you try to mimic or imitate what other agencies are doing and just try to do it slightly better. And most of that betterness is done in the delivery of your messaging and how well you sell it.
Is this something that gets lost over time as you grow? Like, we all start off wanting to treat our employees well, and we want to help our clients. And that's what we do. Like, I really love having a team and I love having clients. I also enjoy the rest of it. I find the whole thing really interesting.
I think it definitely can. I mean, I think that we've probably all been at agencies or companies that were smaller, and you kind of rode the wave with them as they grew, and you saw that deteriorate. And I think that one of the drivers for Catherine and I is to be so people first and people focused. If you read our website a year and a half ago, it was really telling our story of how we think about our people, how we think about resourcing, how we think about creating a culture that we want. And we have maintained and are committed to maintaining that, because I do think it's really, really easy to lose sight and lose focus as you grow, as you get, as your revenue grows, as you have more opportunity. I think you can get distracted. But back to the beginning, you can be purpose-driven and profitable without sacrificing one over the other.
I think the key too is we can't do it alone. Culture is not something that Mariah and I build. We see ourselves as creating the environment for our employees to be able to choose how they show up at work. And what we want to do is empower them with the right skills and the right tools that they can leverage to bring and fully live our values, right? Around inclusivity, around flexibility, around authenticity and transparency. Oftentimes, we don't have examples. We haven't seen the type of behavior, so we don't have those skills. And so I think that's the beauty, but also the frustration of the culture that we're trying to build, is that I would love to be able to bring everyone over that finish line, but really our employees have to meet us halfway at least, right? Because you have to show up and live those principles and values. And so we see ourselves as we want to create the environment for you to be able to do that and to do that self-reflection and to learn those skills. We're going to certainly train you and give you those skills, but really the rest is up to you, right? When we started with, our own little version of the happiness project, which was, can we make people happier at work? And what does that look like? We quickly realized I can't make anyone happy, right? That is really up to you. You have to know intrinsically what it takes to make you happy, right? What it takes for you to build trust in the workplace. And you have to be able to communicate that to someone else. And so there's a lot of work to be done. I think that's something that we don't ever want to lose sight of, right? And just because it's hard or it's uncomfortable, we don't ever want to back away from that, because that is as important to us as continuing to grow, continue to bring in revenue, continue to bring in clients, and to continue to innovate. We don't want to do that at the sacrifice of people.
What does that look like on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, where you are two people and you have people who work for you and they work with you? And what is that relationship like? And what structures are in place to address this?
Well, we start every Monday, and I think COVID and what the work from home and the virtual workplace has created is opportunity to really rethink how we connect with people. And it's not our favorite or desired way of how we're connecting now, but we're making it work.
Yeah.
So every Monday, we start every week with an all hands meeting. We call it Monday Motivation. And usually there's a meditation or there's a theme that we have to carry out through the week. We invite everyone to be vulnerable. And part of that meeting is sharing one word that basically helps the community understand where you're at in that moment. So we encourage our employees to actually be human, right? Emote, tell us where you're at, let the community support you. And no matter where you're at is okay, right? We're not expecting everyone to show up with happy, shiny faces. And
sure,
in fact,
it's Monday morning.
It's Monday morning, right? There's a lot happening in the world. And when you think about a workplace where you have folks from all different types of backgrounds and lived experience, there is a lot of trauma that's happening with what's happening, when we think about the social justice movement or the political climate. And those are things that we address head on and we talk about. And even creating the space to have emotions, to be acknowledged. That creates a different dynamic between employer and employee.
On Monday mornings, it's like at 9 a.m. or something like that, or 7:15. And how long is that meeting?
Hour.
It's an hour. And how many people are on that meeting?
Every employee. So right now it's a little under 50.
And so you guys got to hustle 1 hour, a Monday morning check-in, and we're gonna talk. We're gonna stare at each other for an hour and remember that we're humans, or at least try to remind each other that, hey, we all work here together.
Yeah.
Cameras on, no matter what you look like, right? Cameras are on. We're all sharing. We're all being vulnerable and taking that time to connect as a community. So that's a really important touch point for us.
I'm curious about this as an agency owner, because I have a team, and I believe, how do I put this? That inspiration comes from consistency. If we consistently work together, the muse will come. That's a Stephen King quote that talks about, how does he write? He says that if you don't go sit, basically you're going to write by sitting down every day and getting to work, and the muse will come find you. Otherwise, the muse will never find you if you're wandering around. And so to me, consistency between myself and the team, weekly check-ins with people, there's standardized things. And the things that you're talking about, there's a heavy lift of this culture you're trying to build. And that's why I'm asking about nuts and bolts structures of because you have to create the space to have these conversations, or for the conversation to flow back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Monday Motivations is a big one. Weekly check-ins, right? We have management training around trust and trust building. Go ahead, Mariah, because I know you were going to.
Oh, I was going to say, we have a weekly cadence, and I kind of view it in different tiers. There's the Monday Motivation, where we have everyone at every level, every employee on, engaged, and being vulnerable and kind of setting the intention for the week. Because I think we all know in COVID, a week even may seem like too much to manage in terms of what you're focused on. And then throughout the week, the management, or what we call steering committee / discipline leads, meets with their team, and they have, focus status meetings, weekly agendas, weekly connects to check in on individual team members. And then every Friday, Catherine and I meet with that steering committee to just check in on how that week went. So we kind of bookend the week. What was the intention? What was the outcome? Are there any kind of risks or wins, things we need to focus on going into the next week? And so, we really do. And we've always been a flexible work environment where remote was not foreign to us. We have employees scattered throughout the United States and even in Canada. And so that component wasn't hard, but I think the lack of connection, we really had to hone in on what meetings matter and what is adding value and what's driving clarity and expectation, and everything else kind of needs to go to the wayside, because we can't have people in meetings from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day and expect them to do work. So we've really had an intentional focus on how can we get hyper efficient in meeting times, and how can we ensure that people still have clarity as to what's expected of them and what success looks like.
It's the eternal tension.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. We got to talk about it, then you got to do it, but you got to plan it before you do it.
I mean, I'm missing the whiteboard.
Yeah.
Tim, how are you doing it? I'm such a whiteboarder.
Sometimes I sketch and I hold things up, and I do a really bad job of holding it right in front of the camera. We use various things. It's true that I'll sketch something out and send it to somebody. There's a lot of napkin sketches that are happening. We tried some of the tools early on, and I think leadership probably sets the tone on that, and maybe those didn't stick. But there's a lot of low fidelity sketching happening and planning happening.
Right.
And when I interviewed Dave Conrad, who works over at Microsoft, he's a fellow who helped run Creative Mornings for years and years. And it was interesting to talk to him about that. He was his camera was sitting in front of him, and there was a whiteboard right behind him, and it was framed in a way that you could tell he had figured it out, that you could turn around and sketch on the whiteboard and show the other person, like he had already figured out the framing and it would work, and probably figured out, what contrast he's going to need on that board. And I remember staring at that thinking, oh, that's smart. And then here I am in my basement, and I don't have that, Yeah, it's a lot of sketching. There's a lot of talk, but I really miss. There are times that we need to sit at the table shoulder to shoulder and stare at the whiteboard and just be like, this is what I'm trying to do. And I can't make the perfect document to show you what it means. You just need to look at this and see. I need to include my feelings into, like, when I see this, do you see what I'm seeing? This is a disaster. Say we're just looking at a client workflow for something that we need to improve. And that's what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
I'd find a better word than disaster.
Yeah, I miss the war room. I think there's something about just energetically being in the same space with people that we're all missing. But on the positive side, our vision, Mariah and I vision for workplace culture included flexibility. And so allowing people to work in these remote or virtual environments was always part of that vision. And so when COVID happened, there was a part of us that was excited, because we thought, here's the catalyst. Here's the catalyst to help businesses see you can allow folks, your employees, to work remotely, and it can work. And so we're hoping this is a positive catalyst. And then we're hoping the technology will follow, because I think there's absolutely lots of opportunity for us to innovate from a technology perspective to then now support the way people need to work. I mean, it is so rewarding to me to be able to see employees who have young children be able to time shift, to be able to say, I can work from these hours. We have a new mom who just returned from maternity leave, and I was like, take a nap.
Yeah.
Just go lay down and take a nap. So that is the privilege of running a business, especially as a woman, especially as a mother, to bring that level of empathy and understanding. And I'm like, I don't need you on. I need the best of you. And if that means you're taking 2 naps a day or whatever your schedule is, like, go do that. It means you have to nurse your daughter. I want you to go do that. I want you to have the space to do that. And there's no correlation that we have seen between allowing this level of flexibility and performance. Like it doesn't affect performance at all. In fact, I would say It's the opposite. We have employees who are so committed to Knack and just show up every day and really take ownership because they are, excited to be able to have the opportunity to work the way that is best for them.
I mean, I was still thinking about back to the comments around every day at the end of the day, I have to clear my desk off with 45,000 different sticky notes because my brain works very operationally. I'm thinking about systems and I'm thinking about how we can refine process. And that requires a whiteboard usually and lots of like Xing out. And so I was just kind of still living in the land of sticky notes.
So, I mean, it impacts all of us. I have worked in an agency environment that was 5 days a week at your desk in the office, commute downtown. I mean, to my soul, to my core, I disliked getting on the bus and going downtown and being downtown during the day. And I do feel that where I want to go personally is a little bit at the office and a little bit at home and find the flexibility in between. I think that people who work together do better work, but there's an amount that you need to actually be in a room together. You also need to have conversations that have nothing to do with work. You need to learn to deal with each other outside of duress so that when things do happen, I already know how to work with you. I already know how to read your body language and we're going to be okay. It's just work. We're coming back tomorrow. Life will be fine. But meanwhile, today is hell.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and work through this. And that's hard.
The relationship equity, how you build the relationship equity virtually is something we're still figuring out. It's interesting. There's been a lot of interesting research lately around your camera position and how only see so much of your body, and your body language is such an important communication tool. And so I've been thinking about, do we give all of our employees cameras that are positioned where you can see, more of someone's body? I know we're going to see a lot of sweats and shorts and so forth on the bottoms, but how important your physical body language is and how we're kind of missing that by only being like chest up on camera all day long. So it's an interesting problem to solve.
Incremental privacy conversations. That would be my response to that. I don't know. That's a great question because that means I got to clear off the floor too. Yeah, you can't see this desk of mine. Hey, I haven't asked you, do you or does Knack do a podcast?
We do not.
We don't.
Because we're always on the lookout for great guests, and our producer has a quick note about that.
Hi, everyone. This is Megan O'Neill. I'm the producer of Input Doc. The inaugural season of Input Doc is now complete, and we would love to hear your feedback from Season 1, suggestions for future episodes, or if you know someone who would be a great guest on the podcast. Hey, maybe that person is you. My email is Megan, spelled MEGHAN, @ClydeGolden.com. I hope to hear from you.
So as an agency for Knack, who's your target client? Who are you chasing? Who are you not chasing?
We are a full service marketing agency, as everybody said. No, I'm just kidding. That's hyperbole. So really the way we see the world is, and what our core competency is, we see ourselves as a platform activation company. We are, 90% of our work is in the B2B space, although we do B2C as well. But what we see is really the convergence of data, technology, and content really driving the future of marketing. And so we've created a set of services from business strategy to, once your technology solution is in place, how do you really activate, run that platform at scale? And we're kind of the bread of the sandwich, so to speak. So from a technology, we can help you with technology or platform selection, but we would recommend vendors to work with from an implementation perspective. And then once that platform's in place, we're activating that platform through great content, creative, and campaigns at global scale. We do a lot of work in the channel and partner marketing space, given our focus in tech and B2B. And we run really large scale programs for our clients. So do we do the one-off campaigns and do them really, really well? Yes. But where we're really expert is coming in, really helping you think about how you're running a marketing engine, right? How do you keep that engine running? How do you implement the right people and organizational design? How do you have the right analytics and pulling through the right data that drives that next decision and those kind of ongoing optimizations? And then how do you reach a really large set of customers and or drive revenue through a large set of your partners and kind of keep that engine running.
What are several platforms that you might be enabling, or what was the term that you used? It was platform enablement?
Platform enablement or platform activation. Yeah. So if you think about Adobe Marketing Cloud, Salesforce, those large, a TCMA tool like Ansira, right? And so if you think about a lot of companies are, digitally transforming their business from a marketing perspective and implementing these large technology platforms. And these platforms aren't let's create a brand campaign that sits in market for 9 months and then we're going to test it and see what happens at the end. These are platforms that demand great content, creative, and campaigns all the time. And it's a large volume. And you're constantly tweaking based on what the market or the data is telling you that you're capturing. And so that requires a lot of agility. It requires technical aptitude. It requires operations, aptitude, and it requires kind of strategy or marketing competency. So, right. So we kind of bring all those things together.
So before you guys started, a few years ago, you guys were at an agency, and for like 5 minutes, I swung through as a freelance copywriter at the same agency.
Oh,
and do you mind if I say the agency name? Where you guys, of course, it's on you. It was Rational, and there was a copywriter named Anthony Bursey who I had worked with at Responsys and Oracle, and I had started the agency. I didn't have much work going on. He gives me a call and says, "Would you like to write some gated content, or just endless gated content?" And sure, as a copywriter, you can plug me in anywhere and we'll be okay. But really what I saw that was interesting, what I took away from what we were working on, and I remember the exact name of the program, it was go-to-market. It was Microsoft Azure. It felt like we were trying to help new products get up to speed on Microsoft Azure, on the platform, and get them going and help them find success. And in turn, there'd be more of a likelihood that they would use more Microsoft Azure in the future. That felt to me like what we were doing. And what I was really impressed by were all of the systems put into place ahead of time. The machine itself was much more fascinating to me than the copywriting or the creative. But that's often always been the case with me. That you'd sell a program and there would be a journey map for, name your channel. There was some strategy ahead of that had happened. And then afterwards, I only saw a very small part of what was happening, but I could piece together that nice systems were being sold almost on an a la carte on, like choose what you need and we'll do this ongoing. And for what I was working on, there's a lot of lead gen pieces in which you'd have some piece of content out on the internet somewhere, somebody clicks it, they go to a landing page, they fill out a form, they ask for an ebook. Ebook gets emailed to the person. Following, there were 3 or 4 sort of lead gen follow-up emails, probably followed by a phone call from somebody. And that works. And I know that works really well. And we are on the receiving end of it. But if you've actually managed to get somebody to go and request it, that's amazing. And
yeah, I built that program that you were talking about, Tim.
Nice job.
That was my brainchild of the past 10 years, and really where I've focused my career, because I also geek out on the creativity of the process, the machine, how can we not just do this for one, how can we make it work for hundreds of thousands of different types of partners? What is that combination of programmatic versus customization? And that's really like how my brain orients. And so I appreciate all of the comments around, like, you could see the system in place. Not like what we don't want to have happen is just turnkey, you throw a logo, it's the same content over and over again. Because one, the people working on that type of project, they're not going to find joy there if they're just doing the same thing over and over again. But it's also not effective. It's not doing the right service to the partner. It's not doing a service to the cloud partner, if you will. And so it seems simplistic when you're in it, because that's the intent of like, this seems easy. There's a system in place, but we want to ensure that we ask the right questions and get not too precision, but as focused as possible to ensure that like the content that we create is still beneficial, effective, and resonates with the end user, while not completely destroying the process and the people who have to execute at that speed and scale.
Yeah, your program looked really useful. I mean, it looked easy to implement to various B2B. No, I'm sorry, not easy to implement, but implementable to various
That's what we
B2B
want.
companies. Yeah, no, I mean,
Yes.
it was repeatable. And the idea that you can create repeatable things,
Yeah.
I mean, you never want a person or a thing to be greater than the system itself,
Right.
but you want people to be able to explore within a system.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I took away from my 5 minutes with Rational.
I love it.
And then suddenly the Clyde Golden Agency got super busy, and I was like, "See you around. Thanks for the fish."
Right.
It was fun. You have some advice to other businesses. If you're going to hire a vendor or you're going to hire an agency, there are 5 things that you would like them to consider. And I was hoping you'd walk me through those. And if you need to take a set, I'm sure you know them by heart, but if you don't, you did write them all down here and I have them, but I don't want to read this to you, but go ahead and walk me through them because I thought this was really interesting. I'm a small company and there are probably things that incrementally I could do. And it's worth even just looking and seeing what to you is the bar.
Right. Well, if you think about, I mean, let's be honest, Mariah and I have a vision to be the best or one of the best agencies founded by women, right? And we want to set an example to other agencies that you can be good, treat your employees well, have representative marketing teams, and talk about how that's essential to future-proofing your business and turn a profit. And so we've been on a 3-year, super ambitious goals, right? Because we want to show people that this isn't just about doing good because it's part of our values and what we care about and the kind of people we want to be in the world, but you can also be a very successful business person. And, we just closed a year at 12.2 million. And so, I mean, that 3-year growth is phenomenal. And so for us, we want other agencies to heed the call. Representative marketing, having representative voices at the table is critical to future-proofing your business. If you think about who the modern consumer is, they don't look like you, Tim. I hate to break it to you, but you're quickly becoming the minority, right? And so if you want to think about who you want writing your marketing messages, who's going to understand your audience more intimately and their lived experience than someone who actually looks like who your customers are. So for us, this is about future-proofing your business, right? Future-proofing your business for your clients, right? And so even, the work we do in B2B, right? B2B tech buyer is increasingly more millennial, which means those generations are becoming more and more diverse, and Gen Z is just right behind. And so this is not just a story we tell to our clients, our B2C clients. We're telling our B2B clients, you've got to change the way you do marketing. And so if that's going to be our message and that's going to be our call to action for other agencies, we have a similar call to action for clients because you have a choice about where you put your dollars, right? And if they don't start making different choices, then the system stays the same. And we fight, we talk about we don't see competition, but we're constantly being put head to head with agencies, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and they have relationship. And it's just easier to go to agency X or it's easier to go to agency Y. And so we not only have a call to action for our industry that you need to look around. It's 2021. If we're one of 0.1% of agencies founded by women in the United States, there's a problem, right? And we're white women, so we carry privilege, right? And if you think about intersectionality of that number, it's non-existent. So it needs to change, and that's going to come about by people like Mariah and I starting companies, but it also needs to come about by agencies making changes in the way they recruit and hire and promote from within, right? And so it also requires clients to say, I'm not going to put my money with an agency that isn't representative or doesn't uphold these values. And so I've been approached by several large enterprises asking, what can we do? What should this look like? How do I select a vendor if I'm looking to diversify my supplier base? And so what we put together are these 5 points. The first, and what we think is most important, there needs to be acknowledgement that the system is broken. If an agency doesn't acknowledge that any of the change that they're going to put in place or any of the platitudes or the nice, we're just going to talk about this because it's something that, is being talked about and we want to be part of the conversation, you have to acknowledge that the system is broken fundamentally. That's the first step.
So for instance, in our scenario, I wrote something and put it in a newsletter, but I didn't post it to the site. Realistically, posting it to the site would be a much stronger statement.
I think posting to the site, and for us, it's not joining the conversation and saying, yes, Black Lives Matter. I think from our perspective, it's saying the system is broken and needs to be reimagined. And then it's not shying away from the work that's needed to change the system, right? To change the way you're actually doing work, to change the way you're recruiting, hiring, and creating places that where those every employee can be successful, right?
The act alone of writing something, it was something that I actually had to say that was coherent, that made sense, that I was proud of, was probably the process to me that was, to me, more important than posting it. But I think that posting it is probably the final quit hiding. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. The companies I've talked to, this first point is the one that they've almost removed from the internal guidelines that they put together. And that's frustrating for me because I think the acknowledgement that the system is broken is a very important thing to put in place. But just as important is making the choice to allocate budget to actual certified diverse suppliers, right? If we're going to start to change, we need to put our money where our values are. And so the second point is, finding agencies that are formally certified as a diverse supplier. And then really looking at the data, right? Because there's lots of ways to get around the certification process. Mariah and I just went to it and it was pretty remarkable how much we had to go through to prove that we were women owners of the company. But I think exposing the diversity data of your employees at every single level not only says, hey, I've been certified, but also shows they're actually living those that diversity standards.
So how would I do that? If I were, it's LLC, it's one owner, white male, 48. I will remain a white male, but someday will be 49. I don't have there's no second owner. Do I show it by leadership within the agency, overall diversity within the agency, people I'm hiring, et cetera?
Yeah, so vendors, inclusive of that, who are you, not just where are clients putting their money, but where are you as an agency putting your money in terms of vendors? So if you outsource any of your services like video production or you have freelancers, what is that community base made up of?
Yeah.
But also, your leadership and retention with employees of color, employees that are from underestimated communities. Ensuring that not only are you just putting a recruiting strategy together, but you're also thinking about what a diverse employee base means, how it impacts your business, but also how you ensure that they're supported and there's learning and development support across your entire team to bring up managers and have a leadership representation.
That makes sense. The third one.
The third point is exposing your diversity data. And there have been a lot of great kind of movements happening around, hey, share your data, show that where you're at, be honest with it, and then talk about how you're going to make changes. And this is a hard one, but this shows that, right, if you're a company, right, owned by yourself and you want to diversify, these are the types of things you need to start looking at. Look at your demographics of your employees. Look at the demographics at every level within the organization, right? I've had conversations with, big enterprise companies who are like, but my agency has offices all around the world, so they're diverse. And I said, well, when I'm looking at their board of directors and I'm looking at their C-suite, they're all white. So that is not about they have an office in India or they have an office in South America or they have that's not what we mean here. We mean who is making decisions within the organization. And if you look at a board of directors and they are all white, that is not a diverse organization, no matter how many offices you have around the world.
That's an action. Those aren't terms. I mean, that's just an action, and they have an About Us page full of white males.
Yeah, right.
So the fourth one, have they demonstrated equitable pay and career growth opportunities for all employees?
I mean, we all know what the research shows around gender and racial wage gaps. The advertising industry is no exception. And so, being able to demonstrate pay equity within a company is really important. I know at Knack, we're working towards full pay transparency. So everyone at the company has visibility into our pay bands. And that's something that we expose. It's important for everyone to see that pay equity is not just something we talk about, but we actually hold as a value.
What does that look like, or what will that look like? So if I'm at a specific level within a company, I know what the range is, what the promised range is for all people.
Mm-hmm. So you not only it's a level playing field, but also growth potential. Where can I go from here? What does that look like? We're trying to take a lot of the guessing and hard conversation around how people are compensated at work. Like, we want to provide people with the right information and knowledge to understand what their potential is. And so they don't have to either potentially risk not getting paid what they feel like they're worth, but also the potential of the role.
On my side, once a year or so, I'll look at all the contractors, and I'll look at all the W-2 employees, and I'll put who they are, what their position is, any demographics I can come up with, what their rate is. And usually there's some nail that is silently proud that I realize, it's fascinating to look at, even by generation, by gender, by level of experience. Sometimes you even just look at their age overall, and you'll begin to see things hiding in there. And it's just interesting to stare at, and you begin to ask, well, how did that happen? And sometimes people will come to me and just ask for profoundly low rates because they don't know. And I have to pay, and I'll pay them more than what they ask for, because I can't do it. Like, I can't pay them that. Like, you just know it's not right. And
well, that's definitely not an industry standard.
Well, I mean, if there's
but I can say, as an employer, if we look along gender lines purely, I think the fascinating thing that Mariah and I saw from the start were the men that we submitted an offer to. Every single one of them negotiated and came back
absolutely
with a counter offer.
Yeah.
The women we submitted offer to, very few, if any of them, countered.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we found ourselves having to educate. Once that process was complete, we were having conversations saying, you need to know your value.
Mm-hmm.
You left money on the table. Is that a conversation as employers maybe we shouldn't be having? But we feel it's our responsibility to educate and to help folks know their worth. And so pay transparency for us is an important step there, right? Yeah. Exposing that, not keeping those hidden, but enabling them, whether they're at Knack or wherever they go next, right? Know your worth, know your value in the marketplace, and don't be afraid to come back with a counter offer.
That was our response to, like, we can't go proactively and educate all women on how to negotiate offers, right? So we said, well, why don't we just take the guessing game out of it and say, this is our pay band. Some people will be under, some people will be over when they think about applying for the job, but like, take that component out, because we know that based off of our own experiences being employers, that 9 times out of 10, the male candidates that we send an offer letter to will negotiate, and maybe 25% of the women will. And that then creates inequity within our company. We just didn't want to have that. So we're like, let's put a different framework in place.
Yeah, I see that too. Exactly what you described. Many people just don't ask for their worth.
Yeah.
So I think you had one more point on here, which was about belonging scores. And tell me about belonging, the idea of the value of a team member feeling that they belong.
I think it comes back down to the point that I was talking about a little bit before. When you think about representation within your company, it's not just about getting the person hired. It's about how they actually feel within the company, the systems that are put in place to support each individual that works for you. And so how does that person feel? How does that person resonate with your values? Hopefully they do that evaluation beforehand, but really they need to internalize what those values are and see how they work with their own value system, and the operating principles is kind of how Catherine and I talk about them, how they can execute those within the company. Do they see themselves in management role? Is there a path for them there? Do they feel like there's a voice at the table? Can they continue to learn, grow, and develop within the company? Is it a safe place to provide feedback? All of these things that go into play around retention and building this culture that Catherine and I envision is what we would deem as a belonging score. Can people actually fit into the system without completely reorganizing who they are as a human, right? Like we talk a lot about work-life balance, but to me, that dichotomy means that you're one person at work and you're one person at home. And like that is a lot of code switching going on just to conform to what you think you need to be at a company. Or instead, it's like we have these shared value systems, we have these operating principles, we have opportunity for growth and development. Is that resonating, right? As employers, is that then resonating with the employee? Do they actually see themselves in those plans? And then how do you evaluate that? It's not just a simple, like, I can send out, a survey one time a year and hope that they feel like they belong. It's a multitude of different data points and also feedback from your employees directly. Are they showing up to trainings? Are they understanding how to provide feedback? Do they feel supported by their manager? Are they actually engaging with those employee pulse surveys and being honest? There's a lot of things that go into that.
After I was reading your response to the questionnaire, I went and I had read a Harvard Business Review article about belonging that talked about, we work 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week, and maybe a little less than half of us are profoundly lonely during those hours, even if they work for a large team, that they just don't feel like they're part of something. And yeah, that really struck me. I had not run into the term belonging, and I think this is really important.
At Knack, we talk about safety, dignity, and belonging as the foundational principles for creating an inclusive culture. And if you think about what it takes for you, Tim, to feel belonging, or for me to feel belonging, it's going to look very different than a person of color to feel belonging who has been experiences microaggressions, on a daily basis throughout their day, who feels like their voice is and their perspective is not wanted. I'm not even going to say not valued. I'm going to say not wanted. Who feels, underserved, looks around the room, often doesn't see anyone that looks like them. So for us, we think about the most important person that we optimize for is a woman of color, because if they feel a sense of belonging, we have a really high likelihood of everyone in the company feeling a sense of belonging. So how do you do that? What does that look like? What barriers do you have to break down? What language, how do you have to shift your language? I know it seems small, but we're trying to remove the use of the word you guys from our language at Knack, because that isn't inclusive, right? So kind of shedding and looking at everything, even those small things of how you communicate matter, make a difference.
I use you guys, and I've started to cringe when I say it, but I've been saying it since I was 12.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's a pretty standard terminology, and both Catherine and I just keep each other honest on that. Like you have just same with, different identities. You really have to take a step back and understand your role in learning and educating and being vulnerable to say, oh, I messed that up. What I meant to say was apologies. Like it's super quick and easy. And you build a system internally to acknowledge when, we do something wrong.
What you are describing is a way to create a better team that's more diverse, that delivers better work to clients and solves their problems. And the clients are happier. I mean, that is the business case that you just made over the last hour to me.
Absolutely.
I have found that there are times that just by mix of a team, the work is profoundly better. And that I just have different viewpoints happening. There's more tension in the conversation. There's more like life experience that understands about what that, what the client's customer is going to be going through. I mean, I see it. And there are times that the work is great. And then sometimes I think the work could be better,
Yeah. If you look at the research, to your point, diversity of experience and diversity of background is highly correlated to high performing teams and innovative work. And so not what school they went to, right? Not what degree they received, all these things that in the past were what we looked for when we were recruiting high performers, right? They've had a certain level of education of this certain type of experience. And so we fundamentally believe in order to future-proof your business, you need to look around the table, and it needs to be more diverse, right? More representative of the customers you're talking to, more representative of the communities you're working within, and really thinking about that diversity from multiple factors, right? Not just racial and ethnic diversity, but also experience diversity, background diversity, right? All of these things are really important and show really high correlation to better work, what we think more innovative, really pushing boundaries, right? Challenging preconceived notions or perceptions. And that's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to prove.
Could you see taking these 5 points and turning them into an index or some sort of piece of IP in which you will,
Yes, Tim.
Absolutely.
Good. I would love to have I'd love to have a worksheet like this. I've considered signing up for B Corp a few times and started to work through their survey or their assessment. And then I talked to Gage Mitchell a while back with Modern Species, and he and his team had joined B Corp. And he said finally he had to hire a contractor to manage to get through all of those things. And when you're all alone running a business, there's not always time. Well, what there is, how do I put this? You've already given at the office. And sometimes there's not enough time you feel like to sit down and do this. But there are moments that things do get quiet that you can probably, if I had a workshop like this, I can come back to and think through,
Right. If you just took one of these things, if you just looked at belonging, right? Or if you looked at, demographic data and how do I think about that and what things can I change? I'm in a women CEO group, and the question I hear all the time in these rooms of mostly white women is, well, what can I do? How do I do this? I'm like, well, you start with recruiting. You hire people all the time. So you can start there and really look at your recruiting practices, right? You can start with voting. How are you voting? How are you determining who's representing your values in government, right? At all levels. There are really fundamental things that everyone that can say that I don't know what to do, you can do. And you can also get educated. Do a Google search for Pete's sake, right? And start learning and start challenging your own assumptions. Again, that's why that first point around acknowledgement that the system is broken puts you down a path where you're like, if the system is broken, where do we go? And what system do we want to create? And that's what Mariah and I are trying to do is really be a petri dish. And there's a lot we get wrong. We don't have all the answers. There is no textbook. I wish there was. So there is a lot that we get wrong. That takes a toll on us. That takes a toll on our employees, but we're willing to try. And I think that's what drives us is, can we figure it out? Can we have the right, set of experiences, the right set of tools and training, the right recruiting practices that help us just get a little bit better and help us address this issue around this broken system? Can we overcome that, in big and small ways?
Yeah, before we had this manifesto, remember we had happier people at work, happier people at home, happier world. And that really was the guiding light, and it still is, of how do we ensure that we're making the positive intentional impact to have happy people at work? And it's now created a lot of other systems and things that we question, but it was that simplistic. It was the focus we had on ensuring, if we're going to go down the path of being inclusive and diverse and advocating for equity, we had to ensure that we had the right systems in place. We were asking the right questions and we were bringing the right people on board and along with us.
Well, thank you, Mariah. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Tim.
Input Doc is produced by Megan O'Neill, edited by Lily Chu. The music you're listening to is an original creation by our very own Brian Leahy. We'd also like to thank our project manager, Scott Greger, who does all the work at the agency while we make this podcast. I'm your host, Tim Yaden. Have a great day.